Well, welcome back to the garage, everyone. All right, I've got the Turbo 400 lowered down from its little cubby hole there. Looks good, except could use a little cleanup here. I'm not sure what that reddish looking color is. It may be some mud or something. And at some point, someone in the past had put some Cadillac blue paint up here on this end. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if it was ever colored blue or if it was just the cast aluminum color. But I think my plan will be to get a wire wheel on this and clean it up pretty well and put a coat of paint on it. I'll either use just a cast aluminum color or maybe Cadillac blue. That might be over the top though. But anyway, I want to clean it up because that kind of grungy. Okay, and on the rear of the engine, I've got some cleanup work to do as well. A little rusty, a little grungy, some remnants of motor oil from a previous rear main seal link, which we've resolved over the last few weeks. That's an interesting, let's take a look at the back of the motor. It says E5 right over there, E5, Echo 5. I don't know what the significance of that is, possibly a casting identifier of some kind. But anyway, so the goal is there. I think I'll be cleaning this up with a wire wheel and doing a little paint work and kind of spruce this up, make it look real nice. When we get ready to reinstall, we'll make this look pretty good. So I always like to clean things up when I'm on a new project. And along the way, when you're replacing parts, you might as well clean up and paint as well. Otherwise, it's just going to look like crap. So having said all that, we're going to go over here. Hey, look at that. That's a good looking car right there. The transmission mount bracket, I think I posted a picture of this on the Facebook page earlier, and it was all pretty nasty. Basic process here was I degreased it with a little super clean, and then I pressure washed it, and then I used the flap disc on the angle grinder to clean it up really well. And then I used a wire wheel on it to get down in the nooks and crannies. And then the next step was I used some Eastwood metal prep to get this thing coated, get the rust converted, get the bare metal treated so it has a nice rust preventative coating. And then the next step was Duplicolor self-etching primer. And lastly, I finally found a use for that crapola Krylon black paint. And believe it or not, this is supposed to be flat black, right? Krylon says this is flat black. Clearly that is not flat black. It is satin. They don't know one sheen from another, I'm telling you. Hey, listen to that. Off in the distance, somewhere over there, the strange creature known as Rick with the leaf blower every time I try to record a video. But nonetheless, we'll get through it. Last step on this before reinstallation will be a coating of Duplicolor undercoating, and then we'll put it back in the car when we reinstall our transmission. A couple of other odds and ends here. We got the transmission dipstick stripped down and painted, and even the top of the dipstick, we got that painted up as well, so that's looking pretty good. Not going to do anything with the transmission mount. It looks fine to me. This piece here that connects with the transmission, this end of the rod slips up inside the bushing and the frame rail, and the shifter from inside the car connects right here, and then this end connects to the transmission, for your gear shifting and whatnot. This was pretty greasy and pretty rusty. I cleaned this up, put it in some super clean, wire wheeled it, so on and so forth. I might do a little Eastwood metal prep on that as well. And I may follow up with some cast aluminum and or silver paint, or I may just leave it bare. Not sure what I'm going to do with that. Over here on the workbench, we've got all of our hardware cleaned up. Just basically the nuts and bolts that we've taken off, so on and so forth. And they've been soaking in evaporust, got the wire wheel action, and they are ready to go again just as soon as all of our parts arrive. I've got a Flexplate on order. I've got a set of Flexplate bolts on order. Basically, I bought the best flex plate I could find on Summit Racing. It's a Hayes. And secondly, I bought the best bolts I could find. They're ARPs. Next thing I have to do is order a torque converter because I have decided, because I think it's probably in our best interest to go ahead and replace this torque converter while the transmission is out. And lastly, I'll have to say that whoever the yahoo is that made this torque converter hold down bracket just nailed it right out of the park. Man, that's pretty nice. All right, the time has come. We got some good stuff in the mail. Got this from Summit Racing. There we go. So we're not messing around. Let's see what we got. Hey, look at that. We got some junk. Got some plastic wrap. Got ourselves a set of ARP bolts. 100-2901. They give you some lubricant to go underneath the head of the bolt. On the threads, we'll be using some Loctite thread locker, whatever you want to call it. The red stuff, probably. And we got a Hayes flex plate. It says so right there on the tag. Hey, look at that. Engine side. You know what? It's the simplest things that make a good quality product, I guess. We got some serial numbers here. HFL 14010, serial number PRB20. I don't know. There's a number that got covered over. Not sure why that was covered over, but anyway. Pretty cool. Got a Hayes sticker. That's pretty neat. Let's see what else we have here. Looks like some instructions. Clean and inspect all parts. Good plan. Punch out the date on the SFI decal and attach to the flex plate. This SFI thing, I think that's for racing. I'm not really concerned about that. We don't really need to do that. Step 3, use a rubber mallet or block of wood to tap the flex plate into place on the flange of the crankshaft. Tap it evenly and flush upwards alongside the crankshaft flange. Do not draw the flex plate onto the crank with bolts or an impact wrench. Step 4, use thread locker on the bolts, torque to the OEM spec, which I believe is 50 foot-pounds in this case, based on what I saw on the internet. Hand turn the crankshaft to verify there's no wobble in the ring gear and make sure it clears the housing. Welding weights on the flex plate and blah, 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 stupid stuff that I won't do. And it gives you a bolt torquing pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. So we'll follow that pattern of bolt torquing when we put this thing on the car. Starter alignment and shimming, looks like a detailed procedure for that, which I'll have to digest that offline. And we want to get our starter shimmed correctly. Having said all that, I can tell you right off the bat that this flex plate, holy cow, it is absolutely, it's way thicker than the stock flex plate. Much more rigid, much more solidly made. The part is absolutely exquisite. So, all right, I'm going to clean up a little bit, and I think up next we will begin to install our new flex plate. All right, on the back of the engine, I started to do a little bit of cleanup work, and I ran out of patience, basically. I got some of the grease and grime off of this side over here, and I put a little paint over there, and I can't really get to this area on this side. The exhaust is in the way. I don't really want to take the transmission and roll it back and get it out of the way. I just don't want. I don't feel like doing all that. I really just want to get this thing installed and test drive the car. That's my goal. You know, when you're restoring a car or you're doing some maintenance, it's easy to get sidetracked. Oh, look at that over there. That's really dirty. We'll do that while we're in here. And then before you know it, the whole car's in pieces, right? So we're not gonna let that happen. We're gonna stick to the program, and that is a video series involving eliminating drivetrain vibrations. So up next, I think after this cleaning, we're going to go ahead and get this flex plate installed. Okay, let's go ahead and get our flex plate installed. I think it's time. So we're going to go with the instructions for the ARP bolt says to use Loctite 242. However, there is a stick type equivalent, part number 37643, kind of like a big chapstick, really. And it's stinky. And, you know, you just sort of give it that. And apparently, I guess the advantage of this is, you know, working over your head in a situation where, you know, the bolts are, well, they're above your head. And, you know, I guess it won't run everywhere. That's good enough for right now. All right, let's get this thing up here and get a couple of bolts in it so we don't have to hold everything. Leave a little bit of room for the bolt lubricant that came with the bolts. Put a little bit of the lubricant under the head of the bolt, and that will promote accurate torquing. Earlier I cleaned the flange on the back of the crankshaft, to which, you know, we're bolting the flex plate, so that we didn't have any debris or garbage sitting there. We don't want that. We want our flex plate to sit against the crankshaft flange very, very flat indeed. All right, so I've been dabbing that Loctite on each bolt there. I kind of like that. It's better than the liquid. All right, so let me get the lubricant next, and we'll put that underneath the bolt head. I was looking at the CAD 500 parts website, the CAD company, I think the name of the place is. I looked at their torque spec recommendation, and it was 50 pound-feet for these flex plate bolts. I looked at the instructions for this bolt kit, and it said 75 foot-pounds for these bolts. So who are you going to believe? ARP or CAD 500? I don't know. I know I'm making a mess with this grease that they give you. I wonder if I can keep this pack of grease. What's so special about this grease anyway? This ARP grease. Loctite on the threads and grease under the heads. ARP's serious about these bolts. All right, let's go ahead and tighten those down. We're going to do 30 pound-feet first. We're going to use our little bolt torquing diagram on the instruction sheet. CAD 500 says 50, ARP says 75. I imagine we'll go someplace in between. I got a 3/4 inch socket. First thing I'm going to do is just snug them. Now let's see if we can torque them down. There's 30. And we're going to go to 40 next. We're off to 50. 60. I think I'm going to do 70. 70 is my number. Whew. I tell you what, those flex plate teeth are sharp. All right, let me clean this up and I'll be right back. All right, so I began to reinstall the original starter that came with this car. Ran into a small issue and did a little more investigation, and I think I found out why this starter is the way it is. So since I've owned this car, this starter has always been a little noisy, a little rattly, a little buzzy, it just makes some noises that are not quite right. Sometimes it spins, sometimes it howls. I mean, it's not loud by any stretch of the imagination, but it's just not quite right. We take a look at this stop bushing or stop bearing or whatever you want to call it. Right there, it's right there. Now you see how far it is, the distance from the housing itself. So there's a gap here, right? You see where my pick tool is? There's a gap there. That gap should not be there. This stop bushing should rest up against the end of the housing. Consequently, you can see that the teeth on the flex plate are remarkably close to this stop bushing. And when the gears come out, they spin against this. Now, I don't have this starter installed all the way. There's a gap here and there's a gap on the other side. I was just messing around with the alignment. Came to the realization that this little stop bushing here is simply broken. It's supposed to be back up this way, but whatever is supposed to hold it up against the end of the housing is either broken, no longer there, or something, I'm not sure. Well, that being said, proper alignment of the starter is required, and that requires shimming on some occasions. Quite frankly, I've never installed a starter that needed shimming. I guess I've had good luck until now. In order to shim a starter, you need to be able to move the pinion gear and engage it with the flex plate. Now, some starters have a hole, I think have a hole back here. This one has a hole right here on the end. So you can slip a small screwdriver up in there and you can pry that gear out to where it is engaged with the flex plate, as you can see there. And 35 thousandths is the tolerance around there. It's not, crucial, but it's 35, 40 thousandths, something like that. You should be able to get a wire of that dimension down in between those teeth. And I can tell by looking at this one, you probably can't. The starter will need to be shimmed, that's for sure. However, this starter, I don't plan on using, merely because of this right here. Could I rebuild it and repair this? Probably so. But guess who's not going to be rebuilding starters? Moi. So let's take this thing off and move it over to the bench. All right, we got the old starter back over here on the bench, and you can see the stop bushing here, thrust washer, thrust bushing, whatever you want to call it. It should be up there, but there's a big gap. So I've decided to go ahead and purchase a remanufactured starter, and I picked the AC Delco brand from Rock Auto. And the new starter comes with some shims attached to it. All right, we got that out of the box. And what do we have here? Approved AC Delco Starter Performance Certificate. Wow. It passed all these tests. Man, that's, you know what? I would expect it to pass all the tests. However, that is kind of a nice little instruction booklet. If you've never done a starter before, this is pretty cool. I've done quite a few over the years, so this is not, it's not anything new for me. So anyway, so I'm going to take a look at this thrust bushing washer. I don't know what you call it. Now look at the new one. See the new one? See, the bushing is way up here. Also, you can see on the edge of this one, there is a pronounced edge here where it appears that the original flex plate has probably been rubbing there during the starting operation, or maybe at all times. Wouldn't that be a hoot if the original flex plate was actually rubbing on this at highway speeds, and that was causing our entire vibration issue? That would be hilarious. All right, so I noticed something about this old starter. So if I grab this end bushing here and pull it back, I see a fair amount of play there. That looks like an excessive amount of play to me. We move over here and take a look at the new one. There is no play, or if there is, it's so minuscule I can't observe it. I'm going to swap this starter out merely for this issue right here. Now this starter works, and I'm going to keep it, and I'll probably there's a place in town that does this kind of work, so I'll probably take it to them and have an expert look it over and refurbish it, and I can keep it as a spare. I was taking a measurement here from the end of the pinion gear, 11/16, and the distance over here between the pinion gear and this bushing is a hair over 3/4 of an inch. So if you really wanted to be crazy and say what it really is, it looks like it's 25-30 seconds. How about that? All right, so this replacement AC Delco starter was remanufactured in China. How about that? Consequently, this bolt hole here, up where it meets the block, was too small for the knurled section of the bolt. So these two bolts have a, you can't see it now clearly, but it has a knurled section of the bolt, and it's ever so slightly larger than the shaft of the bolt. This hole was big enough for that knurled section to pass through. The bolt hole in the starter on this side and the upper area towards the block was not big enough. I took a 25/64 bit, I believe it was. Yeah, 25/64. By the way, if you want some really good drill bits, just get on eBay and you'll find bits and pieces here, but these are like really premium quality industrial stuff, and picked it up for a song. Anyway, drilled that out just slightly and it worked fine. The shim set that came with the starter was not shimmy enough, I guess you might say. So I had a Dorman set I got from O'Reilly. And basically I just put the whole stack in that came with the kit. So the hole here on the starter that you would normally use to pry this back is not big enough. I can't grab the pinion gear to pull it back and engage these teeth. I may figure out a way to do it later. However, there is an alternate method. You can take a 1/8 inch bit and you put it between the teeth of the flex plate and the shaft of the pinion gear, and I can get it in there clearly with about a 1/16 to spare, maybe less than a 1/16. And there's a noticeable gap between the edge of the teeth and that end stop bushing. So I think we're going to be good here. This looks pretty good to me, and I got my ground strap reattached. All right, folks, where does that leave us? Cliffhanger! Bet you thought you'd never see that on this channel. Well, I'll tell you what, that's all we're going to do for today. I thought maybe I would give you a shorter, sort of a midweek update on the old Cadillac here. In order to truly give this thing a proper test, I'll need to wheel the transmission out from underneath the car, and I have to get my ramp set up on my little wooden platform to do that, so I don't really want to take care of that tonight. And then once I do that, I can get the car on the ground and hook the battery back up and put the camera on and set the camera up on the flex plate and give it a turn, see how the starter engages, make sure it's okay, see if we need to make any adjustments, so on and so forth. But for now, I think I'm going to save that for another night. I appreciate you guys stopping by the channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to be notified whenever I release a new video, don't forget to click that little bell down below. You guys have a good one, and remember to enjoy driving your classic Cadillac in an anti-vibration environment.